This week on the Men at the Movies podcast, we tie a bow on March Madness by talking about Hoosiers starring Gene Hackman and Indiana basketball. This is a story of second chances, and the reason we've been given those chances is to become a catalyst for transformation. Discipline does not equal punishment, but training, preparation, and maturation. When you play the right way, you're going to win every time. Lace up your Converse and make 4 passes before you shoot. And let's discover God's truth in this movie.
The movies and stories we love are gateways to see ourselves and God in new ways.
Every great story borrows its power from a larger story. The story that's written on our hearts and woven into the fabric of our very being.
Hello and welcome to the Men at the Movies podcast. My name is Paul McDonald, and joining me via the Zoom stream, talking about March Madness, sort of, is Britt Mooney.
It's almost over.
It's almost over. Yeah. We had a great idea. Let's do a basketball movie for March Madness, but then not record it and release it until after the basketball's done.
True. Well, the NBA will still be going on, but it depends. It's not really madness. The playoffs will be coming up soon, but
yeah. Well, we
haven't done a sports movie in a while.
That's true. And here in North Carolina, we have basketball apocalypse about to happen.
Right?
Duke, North Carolina in the Final Four. House divided. My wife was a Tar Heel. She went to school at Chapel Hill. I grew up a Dookie, rooting for Danny Ferry and Christian.
I wouldn't say it that way.
Yeah, it works.
So remind me, are they playing in the Final Four or are they on two different? So
Saturday
they're playing the next
afternoon,
game, right? Oh,
the state comes to a screeching halt.
Where will you be? That's the question. Where are you going to be?
At my house.
At your house.
I will be in my bomb shelter, because no matter who wins, half the state at least is going to be pissed off.
Easily.
Yeah.
Easily.
Yeah. There's no, like in this movie, Hoosiers, it's not like an overwhelming favorite. It's not like Rocky IV where some team's going to win over the crowd.
Where the Russians go, Rocky.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. This is, it's going to be, whoever wins this holds the trump card, especially this being Coach K's last year.
Right.
And by the way, this conversation is going to be extremely dated, even though it's releasing the Friday after the game.
Right.
So by this time, there'll be no toilet paper in any stores in North Carolina. Cats and dogs sleeping together. Mass hysteria.
Mass hysteria.
So we're talking about Hoosiers in probably one of the only states that's a bigger basketball hotbed than North Carolina. That's my hot take.
That's legit. That's pretty legitimate.
Yeah. So 1986, this came out. It's got Gene Hackman, Dennis Hopper, who won an Oscar, and Barbara Hershey, and a bunch of other people.
Yeah.
So I just told you why we picked it. And by you, I don't mean you, Britt. I mean the listeners, because we wanted to do a basketball movie for March Madness. Even though it's going to be April Madness. I have to admit, I haven't watched this in a few years, and I was watching it yesterday. And I texted you because I'm like, dude, this movie's really good. I'm getting choked up like every other scene. And it took me a while to figure out why, like what the power of the movie. And we're going to talk about this idea. One, it's a story of second chances.
Yep.
Which we're big fans of second chances around here.
So is God.
Thankfully.
Thankfully. And third and fourth.
Multiple 70 times 7 or something. But then the reason for the second chances is sort of the coins, the two sides of the coin that we're going to toss and turn, flip, and whatever you want to call it today. So first, the idea, the concept of what second chances were there in the movie. Obviously, the first one is Coach. And the coach, Norman Dale, played by Gene Hackman, he is really the catalyst for transformation. You know, we talk about the story, you want to see an arc of a person goes from here to here. Norman is pretty much the same guy throughout. He does not appear to change. Not dramatically anyway. We don't see it because it's already happened.
Well, he's in the process of change, and he is confronted with his opportunity, right? That's kind of where the movie starts out. Like he gets an opportunity as kind of his last chance. So that's kind of the backstory. And so that's what makes his character interesting. And you see his transformation. We'll get into some of those things as he goes, but he is kind of confronted with making choices along the way. And he has to come back to why he has this second chance, like we said. And I think it's really interesting, as I noticed this time, he starts out the movie alone. Like he is driving, like the whole intro with the credits says him driving into this little town, and he's driving into town alone. And it's basically like a one stoplight town. Like it's there's 64 kids in the whole school, or not in the whole school, 64 guys in the whole school or whatever. It's this really small town. It's a really small school. Everybody knows each other, but he sees this as an opportunity because of his failings in the past and the destruction and the consequences that happened because of his failings. He sees this as way bigger than everybody else sees it. And you're totally right. I love that you said that, because I thought the same thing. Like, he wasn't trying to change the town, and we'll get into this, but he did change the town because of what his focus was. His focus was very individual, and yet also about others, if that makes sense. Like, in other words, he knew he could only control what he could control. It's such a great character thing to study, because we have to know that too. But he also did what he did to dignify others. And in doing that, you saw the transformation in many ways throughout the movie.
And I think one of the reasons that it impacted me so much as I watched it, I'm coming off, we just did our men's retreat that we do here in Charlotte. You know, we had over 80 guys show up, and we're pursuing the hearts of men. We want to see transformation and men come alive and their hearts come alive through truth and this power of the gospel. And what you see is the impact that a man can have whose heart has been set free. You could say he's been forgiven. He's been transformed by the power of the gospel. Yeah, you might be over spiritualizing it, Paul, because this is a basketball movie, but that's sort of what we do here. And what you see is this is a man who's had mistakes, made a mistake. And I love that line that he talks about. He's like, I can't explain what happened. He's like, I think about it, and it's almost like I can almost stop myself from hitting the kid, because he had won a state championship and that pressure for winning had gotten to him. But as with all of us, there comes a moment when the old ways don't work. And we talk about, this is a story of second chances, and there's a reason, and the reason is not to win a national championship or a state championship or anything like that. It's to become a catalyst for transformation of those around us.
By doing it the right way.
Yes.
By acting and treating others in the right way and having the right goals with those relationships. He didn't have the right goals. That's why he ended up hitting the kid. He didn't have the right goals before. He didn't dignify others the way they should have been dignified. And even though he was intense at times about my word is law, but he wasn't thinking I'm a tyrant. He was thinking I have to teach these guys the right way. If it's to mean anything. And whether we win a game or not, which is what, we talked before, I love that attitude. Whether we win a game or not is secondary to learning to play the right way, because learning to play the right way, we will win, period. We will win. But we'll win the right way. And God cares. I say this all the time to my people. I said, God does care what we do, but he also cares the source from where we do it. In other words, like he does care that I'm generous with my money and I'm faithful to my wife. And well, he cares about that stuff. He didn't save me so I could just be stuck in sin again. Right. He cares about that stuff. But he also cares from whose power do I do things? Like, who is helping me do that thing? Like, what's my motivation behind doing those things? Is it love? Am I resting in his power or my own strength? Like, he cares. And that's why I love that, because he didn't want to win, but he didn't want to win at the cost of character.
Yeah.
And that was really important.
And so one of his core beliefs is no one is greater than the team. The team is, as he'll say, 5 pistons firing together. And so we're going to go to this first clip. He's arrived in Hickory. He's the coach. He's the outsider. The whole town is telling him how to coach, how he should do it. But the key is this kid, Jimmy, best basketball player this guy's seen in 40 years, had a relationship with the old coach because Jimmy basically was an orphan. Father died, mother's sick. So Myra Fleener, one of the ultimate wet blanket girlfriends in movie history. And she's like, stay away from Jimmy. I want him to focus on studies, academic scholarship. It's the only way he can get out of town. And he does. He's just like, no. And again, going back to his belief, no player's bigger than the team. But Jimmy, you see him in the shadows watching practice. You see him even when the games start, he's up in the stands and the rafters, almost hiding, seeing what sort of man Norman Dale is. And one of the only real interactions that you see, and by the way, Jimmy doesn't have that many lines in the movie.
Nope.
And he doesn't have any lines in this scene. But Jimmy's out there shooting. Coach Norman goes out there. But the interesting thing was he didn't go out there about basketball. He went out there because he's like, hey, you missed class. But along the way in this conversation, he shares some insight into the man he was and the man that he has become.
You know, in the 10 years that I coached, I never met anybody who wanted to win as badly as I did. I'd do anything I had to do to increase my advantage. Anybody who tried to block the pursuit of that advantage, I just push them out of the way. Didn't matter who they were or what they were doing. But that was then. You had a special talent, a gift. Not the schools, not the townspeople, not the teams, not Myra Fleener's, not mine. It's yours to do with what you choose. Because that's what I believe. I can tell you this. I don't care if you play on the team or not.
I think we could talk about that conversation the whole rest of the podcast.
So good.
Because the town was pressuring it. Like at the pep rally, the students were like, we want Jimmy. We want Jimmy. And Norman goes out. He's like, this is your team. These are the guys who've been working and sweating and practicing. And by the way, practice ain't fun. You know, before Norman got there, practice was basically playing pickup for 2 hours. And now they're getting physically in shape. They're running defense drills. They're dribbling around chairs. When are we going to shoot, coach? You shoot when I tell you to shoot. And what was it? My practices aren't designed for your enjoyment. But it was about discipline and fundamentals. But he's like, the way that talk goes, it begins, nobody's going to get in the way of me winning. But that was then. And what I've come to understand, you've got a gift. But you can't, if you do it for the town, if you shut it down because of Myra, she said, don't play basketball, focus on your studies. And you got everybody telling him, play basketball, don't play basketball. And here's Norman, the only guy there who's like, I don't care what you do. It's up to you. It's your gift. It's just like the parable of the talents. You're going to hide it under dig a hole, hide it under the porch, or you're going to use it and see what happens.
Yeah. In the first practice, Norman comes in and first has to kick out the other guy. First he has to kick out the other guy. This is closed practice and, makes him mad. The guy threatens him. And I mean, it's just like he keeps getting into resistance, right? He keeps coming up against resistance, which it's a movie. Like what kind of movie would it have been if like everyone was like, okay, we'll do it. Yeah. Okay. I mean, so he keeps getting resistance. And so do we, by the way, when we say no, we want to do it the best way. We're going to do it right because there are a lot of people who go to jobs they don't like and they're trying to get through the day. But man, the guy, the person or girl who is at your workplace who wants to do everything the right way and make sure it's all done correctly can be really annoying, right? That person can be super annoying.
Yeah, Hermione right? Granger, not a fun hang in the first Harry Potter movie.
Right. And yet, and he says in the first practice, what I was getting to is he says, I am going to teach you how to be a team. I'm going to teach you, like you said, all 5 Pistons, like there are 5 people on the court and you are going to basically be acting as one. So that's what he was teaching. And then he says, my practices aren't for your enjoyment. So let's just take these 2 things and just kind of delve into just a little bit about who Jesus is. Okay. So Jesus isn't about a star either. He's about a body of believers that every one of you has been given a gift. Every one of you has been given a gift to bless everyone else. You haven't been given a gift for you. Your gift has been given to you for the benefit of others. And he's not coming back for me. He's coming back for us. And in our individualistic Western society, there's power in the individual. But in our individualistic Western society, there's also this reality. The bride, I am not the bride of Christ. We are the bride of Christ. He's coming back for us, a people. And so I, as an individual, have to sacrifice and do what I need to do so I can be a part of that. That's an individual decision, right? But then to be a part of the whole. And that's what he's trying to teach them. And then on the other hand, he says, and my practices aren't for your enjoyment. And when God disciplines us and hang on. Oh, okay.
Because I want to hit both of those. But what I wanted to say was we see that in the movie. Jimmy's gift was shooting. I think it was Buddy's gift was defense, right? Tell me what I want you to stick to him. Tell me if he's gum. A chewing gum, what does he taste like?
Right.
There are roles, like every team is not made up of a shooter. Like there's a defense guy, there's a rebounding guy, there's roles to play. There's the 6th man coming off the bench. And it's when we get in trouble, when we want to be the star, the shooter, we want to be the person that we're not.
Right.
And so that leads us back into the conversation of, okay, well, understanding who I am. Well, how do we figure that out? It's through discipline and practice.
Through discipline and practice. And to your point, Ollie didn't practice with them. He didn't play. He was the management guy. He was the equipment dude.
Break in case of emergency.
Right. And even though he wasn't a good player, he practiced with the team. And the coach said, I thought everybody played basketball. Like he didn't let him just sit on the side while everyone else ran and everyone else did everything, because he's thinking, I might need him one day. I only got 6 dudes or 7 dudes, right? And a couple of the guys left and at the first and everything. But then the other thing was, my practices aren't for your enjoyment. But here's the thing. They kind of are. They kind of were for their enjoyment, because what he wanted for them was what happened at the end. What he wanted for them was not to enjoy practice that day. What he wanted for them was to find out that they could overcome any obstacle, no matter how great. And that is a much better feeling. And that is far more satisfying to do something that you felt was impossible than playing a game of pickup one day. That's where he was trying to get them to. Now, maybe he didn't think it would be a championship, but he knew if he taught them to play the right way as a team, then they would one day overcome something that they could not have done individually.
Right.
That's why we need each other. We're going to go further. What is it? Further together, faster alone, but you're going to go further together. You're going to do more than where 2 or more are gathered. There I am. Like, you're going to do. Jesus said, you're going to do more than I did. It's good that I go away. You're going to do more than I did. And man, I've had pastors argue, well, he meant them. Like, no, he means us. What he means is there's one guy with the Holy Spirit now, but I'm going to give you there's going to be a billion Jesuses running around now, like, with the whole power of the whole Holy Spirit within you, the same Spirit that raised Jesus from the dead. And when we realize that, man, it's one puts to flight 1,000, 2 put to flight 10,000, then it's exponential. And that's in essence, maybe the writers weren't getting to that, but in essence, that's what he's doing. He's saying, as a team, you're going to go farther. And if we make it about one guy, we make it about one person. And by the way, in the first game and all the struggles in the beginning, he tells them, you have to decide if you want to be a part of this team, because my word is law. So he gave all of them the same decision that he's giving Jimmy. It's your time. It's your gift. You decide if you're going to come and be a part of this. And I love the fact that he dignified the young man, but he was also willing to say, everyone else is pressuring you, like you said. I'm not going to do that. I will tell you have a gift, because that's truth. Now, what you do with it is up to you. And I love that. You're right. We could talk about that for 2 days.
Well, and so this idea that, in Hebrews, it talks about no discipline is pleasant.
Right.
But then this idea, like, this isn't me, but if you wanted to play jazz guitar, right? Or if you wanted to do anything well, it takes hours of practice that's not fun, so that you can get to the point where you can do it fun. Like, for instance, today I just went fly fishing and I didn't catch any fish today. But I was with a guy who was watching me cast. He said, "Oh, here, you're doing these things wrong." He's like, we've scared all the fish away now. So let's just spend a few minutes, and I want you to practice picking the fly up so it doesn't bloop out of the water, pausing on your backswing and shooting the line forward. And we'll leave when you do 10 in a row without doing that. And my arm's getting tired and sore, and I'm worried about catching it on the leaves and the trees around us and stuff. But that practice of getting it right, of lifting the fly gently off the water, of shooting a good 30-foot cast out there, and then seeing the trout rise to it, well, there's the fun.
Mm-hmm.
But the fun is the benefit of doing it, of the practice.
Yeah. If anyone's done anything over a length of time like that, I mean, for me, I'm not a great guitar player, but I'm telling you, I have, as a musician, gotten to the point with the bass or the guitar where I didn't have to think about it. I was just playing. And there is joy in that. It's called the zone in sports. I've been in the zone in basketball, but you don't get there right away. You have to work on those fundamentals. And it's kind of circling back to my point about practice not being fun. It's the same way with God. Like, and you quoted the right verse, right? No discipline. It doesn't mean punishment.
There you go.
Not discipline.
Discipline does not equal punishment.
Discipline doesn't mean punishment. He's training you. God is training us now for later. And because what he wants for us, just like I'm sure, because they talk about David and Goliath in the movie, right? Yeah. I'm sure the first couple times David had to chase down a freaking lion. That wasn't the most fun thing he had ever done. But then he was prepared in his own way to stand in front of a giant and say, God, help me with the lion, and he helped me with the bear, and he's going to help me with you.
Yeah.
Right. And so because he gave himself over to discipline when no one was watching. When he was placed in front of a big stage, as we'll get to at the end of the movie, the fundamentals were still the same. He didn't have to wear anybody else's armor. He didn't have to do anything else. The fundamentals were still the same, which for God and for us is resting in God's power and believing that God will do something that he says he's going to do. Right. And so just to kind of circle back around to that his discipline is for our greater enjoyment later.
Right.
It is for, and in this life and in the life to come, it's both. I'm not saying we'll get better jobs in the sense of make more money.
Yeah.
But today I was talking about that with Brian. I was talking about this with Brian. I said, but if we follow God, we will notice more blessing. And I was talking with Brian, who's the head of Phoenix Roasters and Phoenix Community, and when he made a decision to give up the secure church job that paid him gobs of money, and he had retirement and insurance. And when God and God said, no, you've read the story. And God said, hey, I want you to plant a church where you have no money, you have no insurance, you have none of this stuff. And you don't have any security in this world. But that's what I want you to do. And I looked at Brian and I said, but I bet you can tell me you feel more blessed in the last 10 years than you did in all the years in your walk with the Lord combined. Not that he didn't hear from God, not that he didn't bless Brian at all, but Brian said, look, he said, you're totally right. I have so much more intimacy and revelation with God than I ever did before, because I have to trust him. I have to rely upon him in every decision. There's no security in this world in what we're doing. Like we keep being put out there. And my point is that, man, the blessing will come, but man, sometimes you got to walk a hard road and you don't get to shoot for the first week or whatever.
Right.
Like, you're just going to do suicides or whatever, but he's training you for a purpose.
And one of the themes that came up this past weekend from our men's retreat is there is life and blessing, and it's a more abundant life, right? Jesus in John 10:10. I've come that you might have life, and that life, abundant life, an abundant
and that
team
life.
with life. Yeah. Amazing life. That doesn't mean, like you were saying, promotions, car, house.
It could.
I'm not
just saying that
you can't give to the poor unless you have money to give to the poor. So we're not saying it's ruling that out, but a lot of times the life that comes is a life that's more full. Right. Less
good.
Busy, more full.
Good.
But we also throughout the weekend would recognize it is harder than anything you could possibly imagine.
Amen.
You'll go through a shitstorm because the enemy wants to prevent you from taking it. It's going to be harder than you thought and more glorious than you could ever imagine.
That's right.
And that's what those boys found out, right? Practice sucked. But those hours of practice are what led to their ability to play the game. And it's what G.K. Chesterton said. Christianity, or the Christian ideal, has not been tried and found wanting. It has been found difficult and left untried. Yeah, it's more fun for practice to be scrimmage. We loved scrimmaging when I was in high school and played, whether it's soccer or basketball, scrimmage all the time, doing, running the mile and a half to the field, the practice field, not much fun. And then running back after a full practice and, 3-man weave and free throws for hours. And none of it's fun. But I loved what you said, that what we talked about, that we think of discipline as punishment.
Right.
Whereas in going back to this concept of the story of second chances and the reason for our second chances, because our second chances are a form of discipline. Because it's easier. It's easier to show up. Oh, this is how you've been doing it. All right, let's keep doing it that way. Oh, you guys want to come in and watch the practice? Sure, come ahead. Go ahead. Oh, we need Jimmy. Let me go chase Jimmy because that's going to make my team better. That's what the crowd wants me to do. Let me go do that. Ignore Shooter, the town drunk. His own son said he doesn't deserve a second chance.
He doesn't deserve this. I see what you're doing and I don't get it.
Right. And that was his son.
And that was his dad. But yeah, man, that's so good. And, so I coached basketball in Korea, and that was an interesting experience because half of the kids, I had to teach to dribble. I mean, like it wasn't right. Like, even though they were in high school, like these weren't like kids who've been playing their whole life, and knew something. And, we would do drills and we would do all that stuff. But man, I remember when I was in high school, I hated the drills. I hated them. Yeah. I was the one who wanted to just scrimmage the whole time, not do suicides and feel like I was going to throw up and run, all that stuff. And, but, so I was coaching in Korea and it was cold in the gym because it's Korea and they don't believe in heat or air conditioning the way we do. So it's cold in this gym and the balls that we have aren't new basketballs, right? And the kids are just, man. And I'm sitting on the side in like a sweatshirt, just, shivering. And I say something like, man, you guys are throwing up bricks today, man. Cause they couldn't hit the broadside of a barn for like over and over and over and over and over again. And they started complaining, well, Mr. Mooney, it's all, it's just too cold. These balls, they're old and they're all ratty and blah, 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 blah. And I stood up and I went to the 3-point line. I said, give me a ball. And I drained a 3-pointer. And I went and I said, and I looked at them all. I said, it's not the ball. And I sat down. And I told them, I said, you know why I can do that cold? Is because when I was in high school, I used to lay down and while I was watching TV and just with a basketball and just practice my follow through. I'd go straight up and catch it. I'd do it for hours, just watching TV. I'd go shoot around. My dad taught me how to shoot and I got to where it was unconscious. I got to where I didn't have to think about it anymore. I could just shoot. And my point is like, that's where God wants to get us, where our reliance upon him we were renewed, transformed by the renewing of our mind. It's natural. We're going to rely on him. We're going to lean into him in every situation. And that's where he wants us to go. And I love the whole stuff with Shooter. And I know we're going to get into that, but I love if we know that God's had to give us a second chance, man, that is so important because that means we can give grace to others and give them second chances. And that whole storyline is pretty obvious that that's what's happening, that here's a man who had done something pretty horrible. I mean, you're not supposed to hit a kid. You're supposed to love them, right? And he knew it was horrible. And so here he sees this broken relationship between a man, but he saw the guy's gift. He saw Shooter's gift.
And his passion.
And his passion. And so he tried to use that to redeem him. And that whole, even though he didn't quote unquote deserve it.
Hang on. That's a really big concept.
Amen.
Because God does the
I
same
said
thing.
It, but
That was so good. I got to amen myself. Because God will work that way with us.
Yes.
He knew he knew his failures. He knew his shortcomings. He knew his son was embarrassed by him.
Yes.
And so often, and you've mentioned this before, we focus on our failures in an effort to motivate us to live better, do better. When it's no. What makes you come alive?
Yes.
What do you love? What's your passion? What's your gift? You know, we've used the quote a million times here, the Howard Thurman quote. Don't ask what the world needs. Ask what makes your heart come alive and go do that. Because what the world needs is men and women whose hearts are alive.
Amen.
Who are fully alive. And what does Shooter love? His name's Shooter. He loves basketball. He didn't get that from being an alcoholic.
Oh, I thought it was because he had the shotgun. I thought that's why he was Shooter.
But I bet it was because what was he telling about? The story of the shot that missed in high school.
Yep.
He was a shooter. And he shows up and he's, you know, like he's invited to in, like you said, Everett, his son, he's like, I don't get it, coach. What are you doing? Because
he could have picked anybody. He had that one guy who was kind of his support, like the guy who made his son,
George,
apologize and repent. Like he had that guy on the bench. And then when the principal went down with the heart attack, he could have just kept that guy. Like he didn't need, right. And remember the principal said, you like doing it alone. Remember, he was like, I can do this by myself. He goes, yeah, you kind of like that, don't you? But so he could have gone back to his old ways and just done it himself.
Probably easier.
It would have been easier, quote unquote. Yeah. But what he saw that Everett needed, what Shooter needed was another chance for redemption. What Everett needed was his father. That's what he needed. And he knew that. And he knew as much as he could be a great coach, he can't take the place of a father. And a great coach in life, everybody, is the coach that connects people to the Father. That's the best coach you can be. And of course, God's not a drunk. But my point is that so often we feel disconnected from our Heavenly Father. And the best coaching, spiritual coaching you can do is connect them back to the Father, because that's what we long for. We long for that relationship. And even reconciliation, right? That's the reconciliation that sets up Jesus. Like the Father's hearts will be turned to the children and the children to the fathers. Like that's such a powerful moment in this and storyline within this, because again, he wasn't trying. He was trying to change, but he was trying to do it the right way. And he knew that, because remember, Shooter was obviously going out and checking out he went to all the basketball games, because he was like, well, let me tell you about their player number 2. And he had obviously done his own research, but he thought that was his only gift. And when he came in and said, no, I need you to show up.
Right.
That's what the coach said. I don't need your intelligence. I need you to show up. And he thought his only gift was his intelligence and his research. And he said, no, your gift is going to be that you show up. And he got mad and kicked him out of the house the first time, remember?
Right.
Because he said, when you show up, you're going to clean up and you're not going to be drunk, right? He gives standards.
But why? Just like with Jimmy, he told him the truth.
Mm-hmm.
You're embarrassing your son. And that was the key. He's like, get out, because the truth hurt. But the truth, as Jesus says, the truth sets us free, because he can say, yes, I am, but I don't want to do that anymore. And it's when he, as you said, showed up,
man.
And he showed up and he's sober and he's cleaned up and he's scared to death.
He's scared to death
because he doesn't feel like he deserves it. Doesn't feel everybody's looking at him. He's like, we expect this greater life, this Christian life, to be open door after open door, blessings and blessings. But you show up.
You show up.
And you keep showing up. And even in the huddle, Everett's like, you can do this, Dad.
Right.
And he's like, yeah, I think, Everett becomes the encouragement to his dad, even though he didn't think he deserved a chance.
Right.
Because that was the lie. Because he wanted he wanted his dad to show up.
He wanted his dad to show up. And again, even though he gets mad and he kicks him out, right? Because again, the coach is concerned about Shooter, but he's also concerned about everybody. So this has to be for everybody's good, not just yours. It's not about you. It has to be about everybody. And in order for it to be about everybody, because your gift is not just for you, because you can sound really smart. I got it. You can sound smart, stuff, but guess what? That gift isn't really helping anybody. You showing up is going to help. And so even though he told him a hard truth, like you said, your son is embarrassed by you and you're drunk or all that, whatever. But he didn't, I don't know if he said that specifically, but you got to be sober and clean up. I got the same suit that I got married in. Yeah. But all of that
stuff. It's a real wing dinger.
It's a real... But even though he told him a hard truth, in essence, what the coach was doing was calling him to a purpose. Yes. In essence, what he was saying is, I see a gift in you that no one else sees, and I'm going to call that forth. You can do more than you think you can. And it's the same thing he did with the team. I know you think it's just about messing around and playing pickup, but you can do more than you think you can. And then that was played out in the championship.
Because their last season, they were like 2 games over 500.
Right.
You better not mess up this team. I don't know why they became Southern Rednecks, but whatever. But as you mentioned, it's not just for Shooter. It's not just for Everett. It's for the whole team.
No, it's
for the whole town.
Yes.
Because what good is having a town drunk?
Right.
Whereas if you get this guy who's engaged and he becomes a part of the team and he leads the team, he calls the winning play, right? But he as happens, right? The pressure. They're going to the playoffs, so the pressure gets too much. He reverts to his old patterns. He goes back to the drink. He shows up drunk. But when he's lost in the woods, unconscious in the snow, now his son and the coach are searching for him. A month prior, he's just dead, right? Because nobody's looking for him at that point.
Right. And
so he goes and gets the help. He's like, oh, I can't do this on my own. I need more help than I can do. Basketball's not enough. I need, a couple months out in here to dry out. And he's talking about the little green men because you're going to hallucinate when you're going through the DTs and stuff like that. But the son, this is the clip where we're going.
Yeah, just 1 second. But his son goes to look for him because even though he fell, the son also saw his father's purpose. He saw his father's value, that his father could, because even though he messed up, because here's why we don't show up, right? We don't show up because we think we're going to screw it up. And he did. Right. And that's why this conversation that you're about to play is so powerful.
Yeah, because when he did, even after that game, he said, "You did good, Dad."
You did good, Dad.
And that was the beginning of the restoration. Because you needed that moment to lead to this moment where he shows up night before the state championship and Everett shows up to see Shooter in the hospital.
No school this small has ever been in the state championship. I know. I was coach for a while. I won a big game for them. I was coaching the last 2 minutes. I took them right down to the wire. I run the picket fence on them, and we won. And my son, he's on.
How you doing, Dad?
He's a conquering hero. I heard the game right there on that little Philco, and I heard old Ollie dribble on his foot and then make that charity shot, and I started bawling, and they bring the white coats in here, and they put a jacket on me. I was feeling so good I didn't even mind too much.
You doing good?
Well, I feel real empty inside. And I have some bad visions. Son, the other night.
No, that don't matter, Dad. You're gonna get better. Couple of months when you get out of here, we're gonna get a house. Both of us. I love you, Dad. I gotta get back.
Son. Oh, I wish I could be there.
I'll be thinking of you.
Son, keep their bud. Anyway, I'll tell you one thing. No school as small as ever been in a state championship.
You have to take a risk to give somebody a second chance.
Right.
The principal took a risk with Dale, Coach Dale, and Coach Dale took a risk with Shooter. And now the son's taking a risk, right? I mean, you have to take a risk to give someone a chance at redemption. You have to risk something. You have to risk them disappointing you again. You have to risk another broken relationship. You have to risk them failing again. But we keep coming back to it. But it's so important when people fail. You got to deal with stuff. I'm not saying you don't deal with stuff, but here's what God does when we fail. He calls us back to our purpose. The church at Corinth was messed up. It was messed up. Like, people were having sex with like their mother-in-law and all sort of crap was happening. And it was messed up.
Cats and dogs living together. Massive
cats and dogs. But you know what Paul says at the beginning? Essentially, don't you know who you are? He calls them to their identity. He calls them to their purpose. Don't you know who you are? Don't you know that your body is a temple of the Holy Spirit? Don't you know you're going to judge angels? Don't you, I've taught you all this, right? Don't you know who you are? This is who you are. And when we correct people, not that we shouldn't correct people, but what do we correct them to? And as the church and as Christians, we have to correct people back to their purpose. God has something for you to do. He's got a purpose for you. You're not an accident. I don't care what anybody else says. I don't care what abilities you think you have or don't have. There is a reason for you, and we need you, and we want you, and we love you, right? And that doesn't mean you don't say you got to clean up. You can't come drunk, right? You got to be so, it doesn't mean you don't deal with the issues, but you deal with the issues in light of something greater. And that is such a beautiful part of this movie. And it's such a beautiful truth about God, about who God is. And I just love that reconciliation between them, and that's a part of the journey as they go in. Yeah.
Because what they're in essence saying, son comes and says, I believe in you, Dad.
Yeah.
And the dad tells him the same thing. He's like, kick their butts. Because I believe in you.
He gets a commission from his father.
Right.
He gets a commission from his father. He needed that, right? And just, I know we're kind of coming towards, the end. We're hitting these great themes. And I just kind of want to make sure that we kind of express again, because we see it through the end of the movie, that through all these different situations, Coach Dale would rather do something the right way and lose than do something the wrong way and win.
Right.
Now, we all want to do something the right way and win. Like, we all want that.
Sure.
But sometimes that's not the choice. Like, he was even willing, like, and a couple of my favorite moments was when he tells them the 4 passes. Like, this is the theme, right? He tells them you got to do 4 passes in the beginning because he's trying to teach them how to include everybody, how to make sure everybody's involved. And the guy bucks it because they're losing. And he hits a couple shots and everybody cheers, but he sits them down and they end up losing the game. And even though a guy fouls out and Ollie has to go in and they've only got 4 players on the floor, he's like, no, we're going with 4 players. My team is on the floor. And he'd rather lose. He'd rather even lose the team and lose his job instead of doing it the wrong way. And that comes to play towards, when they're going to ask him, not ask him, they're going to tell him he's done as a coach. And there's a big town hall meeting and Myra says, don't show up. It's not going to be pleasant. And he shows up, and in his speech, it's all about the kids.
Yeah.
I'm proud of these young men.
You may not be happy with the results because they haven't won, but
right.
I'm happy with them because they're starting to get it.
They're getting it. They're starting to get it. And she gets up there because she has the information that the town doesn't know about his background and what he had done to a kid.
1950s, pre-internet.
Right. She had it on a little piece of paper. And so she goes up with the piece of paper and she's getting all teary. And instead she says, I think we should give him another chance. And the look on his face, because Gene Hackman is a phenomenal actor. I mean, like, he hasn't done anything in a while. So, some younger people may not even know who he was, but he's a phenomenal actor. And the look on his face was amazing. I wrote down, he might be losing his job, but he won her heart. And that satisfied him because he realized, I might be losing my job, but I won her over.
But she gets it.
He gets it now. And then that's when Jimmy comes in. So they finally do get Jimmy. And so they're in the game before they get to the state, playoffs. They're in the playoffs and they have a chance to win. And the Everett had had gotten stitches and something had happened, foul or whatever. And the stitches pulled and Everett goes, no, I want to play. And the doctor's like, he doesn't need to be playing. Like, he's injured. And Everett's like, no, man. And if kids, and they love the team, he's going to want to play. And even the coach was like, patch him up, keep him in. Patch him up, send him in. And he goes, are you crazy? Right. And then and then there's this moment of realization with Coach Dale where he realizes, no, that's the old me.
Win at all costs.
Win at all costs. And he says, no, you got to sit. And that's the game when the Ollie he prepared to play has to play at the end, right? And so he keeps being, confronted with this. And this is what he tells them at the end before the championship game. He's like, look, we've already won. That's what he tells them. We've already won because we got here the right way. Whether we win or lose, these guys are great. No one expected us to be here. And just that theme through the movie, I think, is so important because how often are we willing to make compromises of our character in the temporary or in the situation because we want to win? We want to win today. And how often are we willing to lose or look like we lose today to win the championship, to win life? And Jesus was willing to lay down his life, but for the joy that was set before him. And that's us. The joy that was set before him, he endured the cross. It looked like he won, but Paul says on the cross, not on the resurrection, but on the cross, Jesus put to shame all principalities and powers. There were beings in the heavens and demons. He put to shame everybody on the cross. And my point is like, how often are we willing to have that eternal view and say, even if I lose today, I'm going to do what's right. I have to do what's right. And the Bible is full of those stories, and we can think they're just stories, but we have to make those same decisions every day. I'd rather lose or suffer a little bit today for doing what is right, because that's who God is. That's what all the prophets did, right? All the people of God, that's what they all did throughout Scripture, but there is reward. there's a resurrection. There's something ahead that I'm looking forward to. And I just think I love that element of this, because I think a lot of times we make compromises because we don't see past today. But I just really want to encourage myself, because I do it, right? I have a tendency. I mean, I want to encourage myself and anyone listening, man. You might suffer for doing what's right, but man, you will not lose. That you will win if you do that.
And so coming down to the end of the movie, the last clip I want to play is from the last huddle in the game. Hickory has the ball. It's a tie ball game. And coach is going to call up a play. And remember, what I say about this team is law. He sat Ray down because he said something in the huddle. But what we see is through in this sort of scenario, through their discipline, through going through battle together, you see a maturation of both the team, but also the relationship between coach and player.
All right, listen up. Here's what we're going to do. Jimmy, they're going to be expecting you to take a last shot. We're going to use you as a decoy. Buddy, you get the ball, give it to Merle on the picket fence. He's going to take the last shot. All right, let's go. What's the matter with you guys? What's the matter with you?
I'll make it.
All right. Buddy, get the ball to Jimmy, top the key. Rustin, spread the floor. Let's go. Let's see.
And it's so cool. I'm going to throw it back to our episode, our first ever episode about the replacements. Gene Hackman.
Oh, that's true.
Coaching Keanu Reeves said, I want the guy who wants the ball in his hands at the end of the game. And you see that here. You know what play he called? He's called the same play Shooter did. Picket fence, Merle hits it. And they said no. And because he listens now, because it's not just dictating. And by the way, that's how our relationship with God works, is at the beginning, it's learning how to do this, learning how to crawl, learning how to walk. And then you're like, wait, because our tendency is, well, this is what worked for me last time. But then there's this aspect of walking where our desires become God's desires. God's desires become our desires because we've been given a new heart.
Good.
And that's the whole reason for the second chances.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, because Norman disrupted the status quo of the entire town.
Yep.
He changes what people believed about themselves and others. And again, Jimmy didn't talk much in this movie. I think it's basically, I play basketball. Coach stays, I'll play. If he goes, I'm go. And then I'll make it.
I think they found an actor who could pretty much hit every shot. Like in that scene that clip we played, like that the actor only misses a shot at the very end. Like he hits like 15 in a row. Like
right, because he's so disrupted by what the coach had told him.
It's a beautiful thing, but they actually don't tell the coach no. They just had this big look of disappointment on their face. And so he had to ask them why, what's wrong with, that's why he's asking them, what's wrong with you? And he realized the team that he built wanted this guy to be the hero. And and the fact that he wanted to be a hero, it said everything about their character, like in that moment, because, you know, Jimmy didn't really want to be a hero because he didn't join the team until it was a team.
Right.
He didn't join the coach until the coach said it's not about you.
The coach had to prove himself, right?
Right. He had to prove himself. Is he a man of character
and a man of integrity? Is he someone I want to almost bestow my gift on, right?
Oh man. And that's a whole nother episode. We can't go down that road. But all of that. And it was so beautiful. And so they had all grown up, and going back to that speech before the game, and he tells them they're already winners. the last thing he says, he looks at him and he says, I love you. That's all. That's it. I love you. But it meant something. He wasn't just saying, hey man, I love you. Like he said, I love you. Like, because they had been through the battles together. And like I said at the beginning, he comes in town alone. And again, he wasn't trying to transform the town, but he did transform the town by saying, I know even if I lose, I'm going to do it the right way. I'm not going to be that old man again, because I hated that guy. I wish I could change that every day of my life. I think back in that moment and say, man, if I could just change it. So now I have motivation to say, no, I'm going to do it the right way. Even if I lose, I'm going to do it the right way. And through that, he wins. But he doesn't just win a championship. He wins the heart of a woman. He transforms a community. He has a community. He's a part of something, and he's a part of something great. And because of all of that, he has sons in a sense, right? Yeah. He was not married. He doesn't have any kids, right? But now he's got sons. He's got family. Like, it's not just
he's got a basketball. Dignity to Shooter.
He's restored dignity to Shooter and reconciled a father and son. Like, but he did all of that. Why? Just because I want to make it simple for people. I don't want people to think, man, I'm going to town and change everybody like that. It wasn't his goal. His goal was, I don't care what happens, what the consequences are. I'm going to do the right thing. I'm going to do what's right because I don't want to be that other person. I don't want to be that person. I saw the damage that did. I don't want to be that person anymore. And just encourage everybody. That's how powerful, because God will change people. I can't change them. They have to make their own choices, but I have to do it with whatever I'm given. I have to lay it before God and say, God, what do you want me to do? What's the right thing to do? Win or lose in this world, I know that's going to mean I win ultimately later in this life and in the life to come. And I think that's such an amazing part of this movie.
And that's the question we have to ask ourselves is what's been difficult and left untried? I can't do that. It's too hard. I'm too alone. I might lose. I might miss the shot. I might let people down. I might disappoint someone. Again, wrapping up that idea from Chesterton of Christianity hasn't been tried and found wanting. It's been found difficult and left untried. And there is life. There is restoration. There is transformation available. It's not easy, but it's absolutely worth it.
Amen.
Win or lose. So this has been Paul McDonald and Britt Mooney talking about Hoosiers, that 1986 classic. If you haven't watched it, go watch it. Especially here at the end of March Madness, moving into April showers and May flowers and all those other things. So I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I hope you join us next time here on the Men at the Movies podcast.
Jimmy, I want you to meet someone. This is Norman Dale, your coach. I've seen you guys can shoot. There's more to the game than shooting. There's fundamentals of defense. The boys and I are getting to know each other. See who we are and what we can be. Let's be real clear about what we're after here, all right? It's team. 5 players on the floor functioning as one single unit. Okay? No one more important than the other. I love you guys.
Something inside has been awakened. I can no longer be who I was before. But if I am no longer who I was, who am I to be?